Hello, my most amazing and awesome artists. Today we're going to be using earthenware clay to make our very own big-mouthed creatures. Now, these creatures can be whatever kind of creatures you want as long as they've got a big mouth, because that is going to be the base of our sculpture. A sculpture is anything you can see all the way around. It's 3D. So anything that has a big mouth, you'll be able to make today, whether that is a frog, whether it is a monster, an alien, or a fish. Whatever you want today, you can make out of clay as long as you follow a few rules, which I'm going to show you how to follow along with. You can make anything, so think about what kind of creature you want to make. It's going to have a large mouth, some eyes, maybe some details like fins or teeth or a tongue. It's up to you what you choose. So here we go. Here's how you start out to make your big mouth creatures. You're going to have a block of clay. You need to get this block of clay into a sphere. But first, I need to pinch off some clay to save for my details. So first, I pull some off and put it aside to save for later. Then I'm passing the clay back from hand to hand to work out any air bubbles in the clay. I'm not flattening out on my table because that would create more air bubbles when I go to make it into a sphere. A sphere is also known as a ball of clay, which you can make by rolling in your hands, keeping one flat and one on top rolling. After you do that, you're going to dive your thumb into the center of your sphere. You're going to dive your thumb right in and pull it out. Then you're going to show me a baby gator and chomp. Chomp, open, turn, chomp, open, turn. You can think of it as baby shark or baby gator, whatever you feel. Keep those two fingers on the outside nice and strong as you're pinching and turning. Pinch, open, turn. Then you're going to make it a little wider to open that mouth up. But you need to do the pinky test. If your walls are as thick as your pinky, you're good to go. But if they're thinner, you're going to have to fold them over and smooth it out like I just did so they're nice and strong. If your walls are as thick as your pinky, then it'll stay strong. But if they're thinner, it will fall apart once you add your details. You don't want that to happen. So make sure that it's nice and strong and then turn it on its side. This is going to create the mouth for your creature. Now on the top is where you're going to start putting your details, like the eyes, maybe a nose, maybe any other details for the inside of the mouth. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll some smaller spheres using that extra clay I pinched off earlier. These are going to be for my eyes, maybe for some feet, maybe for a tongue. It's totally up to you. If you know how to make a pancake out of clay, which is what I just did by pressing down, or if you know how to make a sphere, which is how I made those balls for the eyes, and if you know how to make a coil, which you also might know as a clay snake, then you can make anything. If you know how to make a sphere or a ball, if you know how to make a slab or a pancake, then you're good to go. Just make sure that all your details are as thick as your pinky at least. Now, if you just stick on those details, they're going to fall right off. So we have to do something called scratch and attach. You've got to scratch each side of what you want to stick. So if I want an eyeball, I got to scratch the back of the eyeball and then scratch where I want to stick it. This is called scratch and attach, and then smooth and smush. You want to smooth and smush because when we dipped in the water to scratch and attach, that created a clay glue. Now you need to smooth and smush it on to make sure that that glue really stuck, because there's a chance that when it dries, it could fall right off if you didn't scratch it enough. When you're scratching and attaching, it's creating like a clay Velcro. Velcro has texture on both sides of what's sticking together. So I need to scratch my clay base or my mouth, and then I need to scratch the eye or the detail I'm going to stick on. Scratch, attach, smooth, and smush. It's important that you don't see many cracks or lines when you attach something on. So if I can see that line underneath my eyeball, like there's space underneath, that means it's going to fall off when it dries. You need to make sure it is now becoming part of the base of our pinch pot that we created first. So you are attaching everything to make it all one. To do that, you scratch, attach, smooth, and smush. Even the tongue gets scratched and attached and smooth and smushed. If I just stuck it in there, it would fall out when it dries because clay gets very fragile as it dries. Even if it sticks today, it might fall off tomorrow, or especially when it gets baked in the kiln. I'm going to create some ears by making a sphere, smashing it down into a pancake, and then pressing it down to make a little clay tab. I need a space to be able to scratch and attach, so I scratch on that little tab that I created, and then I can use that same tab to smooth and smush. That gives me a surface to be able to attach it. If anything is smaller than my pinky, it's going to be very difficult to scratch and attach. In fact, it will probably fall right off. At this point, I could be making anything. I'm going to create maybe some little paws now that I have extra clay and extra time. You might only have time for the key details like maybe the eyes, maybe some ears, and maybe something in the mouth. It's totally up to you what you create, but I'm going to turn mine into a monkey. So I think my monkey's paws are going to be at its mouth, maybe holding it open, making a silly face. And then I'm going to work on my details to make sure that it looks more like a monkey. So to do that, I'm going to use my sharp, pointy tool to carve in. Anything I carve in, I'm pressing lightly. If I were to press all the way through, that would create a hole in the clay. So I'm drawing very lightly, moving off any clay crumbs that I get from carving. So I can brush off those clay crumbs so that they don't get baked on in the kiln. Then I'm going to use the bottom of my clay tool, the not so pointy side, to press into my eyeballs. I press into my nose, I make sure it's nice and strong, and now I'm going to add a tail. If you add a tail today, make sure that you do the pinky test. That tail has to be nice and strong, and you have to scratch and attach and smooth and smush. Everything that you add today needs to be pretty close to the base of your sculpture or the pinch pot. If that tail were to come up and stick straight up in the air, it would probably end up falling off because it's not supported. So anything that you add needs to be attached in at least 2 places. So my tail is attached at the bottom, and it's going to have to touch at the top too, like it's curved around or curled around the back. It is looking a little tricky. I wish that I could have it just sticking up, but that would end up breaking in the kiln. Any tiny details like that just sticking up or out will be breaking off. So I don't want to upset you by telling you that it broke off next week. So please just do me a favor and make sure everything is nice and strong today. If it seems like it's going to fall off today, it's definitely going to fall off when it dries. So make sure that you are working very carefully. You have a variety of tools in your toolbox today. You can use some of these tools to create texture. When you're completely finished and you're sure it's how you want it, you are going to put it on a tray that has your name on it. Look for your name and place it carefully on there. Always hold it with 2 hands when you're walking around with it, just in case there's any accidents. You want to be making sure you're holding it tightly. Now I'm showing you what I really hope doesn't happen today, and that's anybody getting frustrated and starting over. Because what happens when you smush your clay piece is that you have to get out all the air bubbles again. That's something that a machine and Miss Q already did for you. So make sure that you don't waste your time today by starting over. Just to make sure that you understand the steps, let me start over again to just quickly review. Now do it along with me with your imaginary ball of clay. The first thing you're going to do is take off a pinch of clay from your clay ball, and then take the majority or the largest part of your clay to roll a sphere. Remember that extra part's just for details, lightning speed. Then you dive your thumb on in, all the way down. Then take out your baby gator and chomp, open, turn, chomp, open, turn, chomp, open, turn. Make sure that mouth is nice and wide, but do the pinky test. Make sure those walls are nice and strong, not any thinner than your pinky. After you make sure that they're strong and nice and smooth, then you can start adding your details. This is the part where you get to decide what kind of creature you want to make. Right now, I'm going to make a clay fish. Anything that I add to my animal or my big mouth creature, in this case, this time it's a fish, I need to scratch and attach. So if I'm attaching an eyeball, I scratch both sides, creating a clay Velcro to stick down. Then I'm going to smooth and smush anything that I stick, making sure that it's nice and attached and doesn't fall off. Smooth and smush, scratch and attach. This particular creature is going to be a fish, so I'm going to use my extra clay to roll out some slabs by making a pancake out of my ball. Then I'm going to make a little tab to stick them on, maybe even cut the circle in half to make 2 fins. Going to scratch and attach both of them on that little tab I created, making sure it's not thinner than my pinky. That way they're nice and strong when I go to smooth and smush them on after scratching and attaching. I can add on any details such as a tongue or some top fins or some back fins, but whatever I decide to add, I gotta make sure that it's nice and close to that sculpture. That way it doesn't end up breaking off. It's gotta be nice and strong and supported by the big part of your sculpture. That's the big mouth creature you got there. It's mainly mouth, just a little bit of details, and that's what's so awesome about these. Alright, artists, I just wanted to show you one more example of a something that you could create and add some awesome details to. This is one more example of texture. You could use a popsicle stick or a certain tool to press in scales to your creature. Maybe you want to give your sea creatures some scales, or maybe even an alien you want to give it scales, or a monster. Whatever it is, use that texture tool. It comes out really cool. When you are completely finished and carefully put your sculpture with 2 hands into a box, you're going to use an art wipe to clean off your hands. The reason you got to use an art wipe and not the sink is because the clay could clog the sink. So make sure you use an art wipe to get the majority of clay off your hands, and then throw that out and then visit the sink if you want. This is what a fish would look like after it comes out of the kiln. This is what it looks like before, and this is how we make it. Alright, awesome artists, start making your pinch pots to make your big mouth creatures. Can't wait to see what you create.